Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And very glad to have with us live on this Veterans Day 2019, Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes. Assemblywoman, thank you for calling in.
Well, good morning. How are you today?
Doing well, and yourself?
Very well. It's just starting to snow up here in Caledonia.
Yeah, we've had a bit of that over the weekend here on the Hill. Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes, you were at the Dansville American Legion over the weekend, I see on your Facebook page.
I was able to get there on Sunday. I had spent part of last week down in New York City, and I did miss their big dinner to celebrate their 100 years of the Legion on Saturday night. But my chief of staff was there in order to present them with a proclamation from the Assembly on my behalf. But I made it down by noon yesterday when they started the chicken barbecue. So I think I made out pretty well because I got a couple of great takeout chickens.
All righty. And you're going to be speaking tomorrow, I believe, at 5 o'clock at the upstairs in the old courthouse in Hornell. And you're going to be speaking among other topics about the upcoming bags ban. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, thank you. As many of your listeners know, in March, there's going to be a new law taking effect that will ban a fair number of the plastic bags that we normally have been using in our communities. For the most part, it's aimed at garbage bags, or not garbage bags, but the bags you would get at the grocery store, which I use, is garbage bags. But in any event, and so it's aimed at those, but it does involve a lot of other things also. So it's important that people come in so that they know what plastic bags are usable, which ones aren't usable, and and we can have a good discussion because we use plastic for everything, for food, for your sandwich when you want to go to take your lunch to work. So it's important that we have all of this good stuff and we get it all worked out. What's good, what's bad, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do.
Your thoughts and opinions on this upcoming bags ban and the series of rules that goes with it.
I'm sorry?
What if you could a little more on your opinion on what you think of this upcoming series of rules? I believe it goes into effect in March, you said?
Yeah, I mean, it's the things that are confusing to me and other people is they considered the bags that we've been getting from the grocery store to be single use, and obviously we'd all see them out in some of the farm fields and along the sides of the road, and that is bad. But they are recyclable, and I really wish we would put more incentive into getting these things recycled in an appropriate way so that they're not garbage along the side of the road. But most people I know never use them for single use. Like I said, I use them for garbage in small waste paper bags, baskets like the ones in the bathroom or in my motorhome. If I go traveling, I put my shoes in them so that they don't get the rest of the clothes, dirty inside of the luggage. And, people use them for when they're walking their dogs for poop bags. But it's interesting because it's okay now that you can buy all these prepackaged small bags and garbage bags that come in the big long rolls. So we'll have to be buying those now, where before we were using the other ones. So I'm not really sure ultimately how much we're going to decrease the use of plastic as opposed to just change what we're doing. So rather than using the old grocery bags, now I'm going to go to a store and actually buy garbage bags. So you kind of do wonder what the trade-off is here.
Talking with Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes. She's going to be speaking tomorrow, Tuesday, November 12th at 5 p.m. upstairs in the old courthouse building in Hornell. Assemblywoman Byrnes, we've heard a lot of talk about this from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, State Senator Tom O'Mara, and numerous local and regional law enforcement agencies. They are not pleased with the criminal justice changes that are coming in 2020, especially bail reform. Your thoughts on the bail reform that's coming up in 2020?
No, I share their concerns that it could be a rough road starting in January. We worry a lot about public safety and what's going to happen with the bail, especially with the bail reform, because so many offenses now are going to be appearance tickets. And people currently who are in custody awaiting trial are going to have to be released because right now a judge has determined that they're not a good risk to come back to court, and that's why they're being held on bail. And a lot of these people are going to have to be released in the month of December in order to bring our states into conformity and our counties into conformity with the new law. So, you know, a lot of people who are in are going to be released. There's about 900 people in New York City that are just going to be released from jail and told when to come back to court that have already been determined to be bad risks to come back. Approximately 200 people in the Monroe County Jail, and I haven't spoken to your sheriff or the Livingston County Sheriff, but I'm sure they're going to be doing releases as well. And I'm not sure if you heard down there, but it was only a few days ago that there was a burglary in Stafford, New York, which is about halfway between where I live in Caledonia and Leroy, up on Route 5. And a guy broke into a home with two elderly people there, and luckily for the elderly gent, he lured the bad guy into a room where he knew he had a shotgun, and he was able to blast him once with the shotgun. He didn't kill him, but he was hospitalized. But in the future, that offense, burglary in the second degree, is going to be an appearance ticket. So when the police, in January, if the police were called to that same scenario, as soon as the guy was released from the hospital for his wounds, he'd be given an appearance ticket. He would never go to jail, despite the fact that he broke into the home when it was occupied by an elderly couple. I'm sure he scared the oomph out of them, and to a point where the gentleman felt he had to protect himself. And they'll just be allowed to walk free, you know, right from the scene. They get arrested. Here's your appearance ticket. And, you know, what does that do to instill any sense of security in people in our society? And that's what's really scary, along with the fact that once you're 55 and older and you're in prison, if you've done 15 years of your sentence, you'll be parole eligible. You know, the whole game plan here, from as far as I can see from the Democrats and in the state, is to empty our jails and our prisons. And all this does is put people who are known to be criminals, a lot of whom are known to be criminals and violent, back into our society where we can be re-victimized. And there's nothing good that can come out of that.
Talking with Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes, I'll ask you a question that I asked Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard last week when the sheriff was on the Newsmaker show. Rochester is not in your district, Assemblywoman Byrnes, but for years you served, I believe, as a Rochester judge, a Rochester area judge. What do you make of this new citizens panel that's going to be reviewing police cases in terms of police brutality type accusations? What do you make of that, taking it out of the hands of the mayors and the chief of police and the police commissioners and making it a citizens review board?
You know, I understand why some people worry that the police or any organization can't enforce itself. But I was up there long enough that I had faith in the chiefs of police and the mayor and all the people who had been on review boards, because anything that's done that's wrong by the police reflects on all of them, and none of them want a bad reputation. So they know it's in their own self-interest to be as thorough and as fair as possible. But right now, with this potential, with not the potential, but with having a civilian review board starting up, you're going to have a lot of people who aren't familiar with police tactics, with what is allowed, what isn't allowed, and they may look at something and find it and think it's an egregious error in judgment on the part of an officer on how they handled the situation, when in fact it's something that was totally appropriate given the situation they present themselves in. There is so much danger to pose to our officers and our deputies on the streets that you really need people who understand what they're going through, what the rules are, what the training are to make these decisions than just having a civilian review board.
Yeah, the concern among many law enforcement friends of mine on Facebook pages was that the police are always going to be considered wrong in any situation that pops up by these civilian review boards. I'm wondering, and I asked this question of the sheriff, and I want to ask you too, do you think the downstate New York City Democrats will push for having these kind of panels in towns, cities, and villages statewide?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Last year, they already pushed through legislation so that, there would be mandatory use of force requirements for all departments, even if a department already had its own that was working well. They want to circumvent that and create at a greater level requirements on our police. So, yeah, I think this is going to continue to be bigger and bigger pushes to handicap our law enforcement and instead to reward the criminals in our society. I have no doubt about that at all. And it really ticks me off, and we'll be fighting against it as much as we can when we get back to Albany.
Yeah, it's kind of an upside-down way of looking at things that they seem to have among the New York City legislators, but all policemen are always wrong all the time, and nobody's guilty of any crime they're accused of, basically, is where they seem to be these days, the New York City legislators.
It does. I was actually shocked when I got down there and would listen to people talk in committees and talk on the floor of the Assembly that, it's almost like we're coming from different universes. And it's a little frightening sometimes because I've always found law enforcement to be very reliable. I would have no qualms in an emergency of calling 911. The good guys are coming to take care of me. But they look at it totally differently. They totally look at, I shouldn't say all, but a lot, totally look at police as the enemy and think of them as the enemy. And everything they do is wrong and is always designed to hurt people, even if it isn't. And that is a little bit frightening.
Going to take a quick break. We're on the line live today on this Veterans Day 2019 with Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes. Stay with us.
Selecting a nursing home for a loved one isn't easy until you've discovered Hornell Gardens Nursing and Rehabilitation. Hornell Gardens delivers the highest level of care, compassion, and commitment with amenities and activities that will enrich body, mind, and spirit. It's a place that's close to home. Stop in for a tour of Hornell Gardens, located at 434 Monroe Avenue in Hornell, or to learn more, call 585-222-CARE or visit hurlbutcare.com.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Rob, tell us about this winter storm warning on the way.
Well, Brian, depends where you are this morning in the listening area. We're kind of split down the middle. To the west, we have a winter storm warning. To the east, we have a winter weather advisory. All of us are going to see some snowfall out of this system. It's way too early for this, but we've got a lot of very cold air in the country. 22 below this morning in central Montana. That is not the wind chill. That's the air temperature. So if it's that cold there, we are also going to be below normal. Winter weather advisory in effect for the eastern parts of the listening area from 1 p.m. through 9 a.m. tomorrow. Western parts of the listening area, it is a winter storm warning. We'll see a little bit of light rain and wet snow develop this morning. It'll be changing over to all snow later today. Temperature makes its way up to about 35 to 40. Tonight, periods of snow, Most of us are going to pick up about a 2 to 4 inch accumulation tonight, Brian. Lows 20 to 25. Scattered snow showers and breezy for tomorrow. Unusually cold. High temperatures 25 to 30. Snow will taper off to flurries and snow showers tomorrow night. It all ends. We're breezy and bitterly cold. Lows 10 to 15. Partly sunny Wednesday. Still cold 25 to 30. Looks like it moderates a little bit through Friday. And then we turn cold again for the weekend, Brian.
Thank you, Rob. Back with Republican Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes here on this Veterans Day 2019. Assemblywoman Byrnes, I see your father's, I believe it says 1954 photo on your Facebook page.
It is, when he was in the Army. He was in the Army during the time of the Korean War, but he was actually stationed in Germany.
Okay. Yes, and as Facebook users all know, a lot of people posting similar photos today. And they have events coming up today in the 9 o'clock hour and the 11 o'clock hour at what they call the Field of Honor over by Steuben Trust Company Bank today. Again, Veterans Day 2019. Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes, in the last segment we talked a little bit about some of the law enforcement, criminal justice changes that are coming in 2020. And recently we had on Alfred Police Chief Paul Griffith here on the show. He's from over in Allegheny County, way outside the district. But I'm sure that this applies to the college towns in your district, Assemblywoman Byrnes. Bail reform concerns with drug dealers. Police Chief Paul Griffiths in Alfred said, hey, you know, when we get some of these kids from New York City or wherever they're from, Rochester, Buffalo, if they're facing any kind of drug dealer accusations and we have to let them go, what are the odds that they're going to come back for their court appearance?
Right. Oh, I think it's pretty good that they won't, unless for whatever reason they live in the area. And even that could be a crapshoot, because we're facing that also up in Livingston County. 390 is a huge thoroughfare for transporting narcotics. And our sheriff is routinely making huge drug busts right along the 390 corridor.
Read them on the air quite a bit.
And many of these people aren't from the area. An appearance ticket, why come back?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out in January of 2020, which is not far, only weeks away. Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes, you were raising attention to an issue several weeks ago about the Article 10 boards. The Article 10 laws, which was passed a few years ago. What it does is put up a board made of, I believe, the Public Service Commission has something to do with it, and they decide who from local towns where there's a wind project or a solar project will be on siting review boards to decide where the wind turbines and where the solar panels will get to go. You were concerned because the review boards did not have enough local ad hoc committee members. What's the latest there?
Right. Well, if just using one example, up in the northern part of my district, where there is a large solar project planned, approximately 2,500 acres with up to 600,000 solar panels. So we're talking a large project. And we've been fighting to try to get our local representatives from the towns on the board so that they can let the people in Albany know our concerns, the issues, and what would make the project more palatable if it does go forward. And we were a little bit successful in that we got Carl Hasty, who's the Democrat Speaker of the Assembly, to appoint somebody from one of the towns involved onto the board. And we were hopeful that the Senate Democratic leadership would finally make an appointment. They should have made these appointments 7 months ago. But in any event, we were hoping they would. And then all of a sudden, about 4 days ago, found out that the Senate leadership Democratic leadership decided to make an appointment, but they chose someone who had never been nominated from either the town of Caledonia or Rush, where the project is, was not a nominee of any of the towns or counties, doesn't live in the towns, and apparently lives in the city of Rochester, and nobody knows who this person is. The town of Caledonia and myself and a lot of other people are absolutely in an outrage because local representation on the board doesn't mean finding somebody from a city that probably, where the person probably doesn't even know where Caledonia or Rush are. That's not good representation for our community. Caledonia has filed a motion before an administrative law judge to try to have this person removed because they lack the qualifications to be appointed, and we'll see what happens here in the near future when the administrative law judge makes a decision. Because if the law judge rules in favor of the Senate Democratic leadership, then the Article 10 proceeding means nothing. Local representation will never be local representation. There could be a wind project going on, and there are many of them in Steuben County and up in Prattsburg, where one is planned, and the powers that be could decide that they don't want somebody from Prattsburg to actually make a decision about their own community. Let's have somebody from Corning. Not that people from Corning are bad, but people from Corning aren't going to know the thoughts and the concerns and the issues of the people in Prattsburg. And that's the whole reason that this law was designed to have local representation by having people on it who are directly affected. So this lawsuit is going to be huge on the entire direction of local representation, not just now, but into the future.
And we'll see if that topic comes up tomorrow with Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes when she comes to the upstairs of the old Hornell Courthouse tomorrow at 5. With that, we have to leave it. Assemblywoman, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
I want to thank you. I want to thank all the veterans and their families, and I hope everybody can get out to participate in events today as best as they can, weather permitting.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman.
Thank you, sir.